I'ma help the people close to me. They help the people close to them and then hope.
Welcome back to another episode of Unguarded with your girl Jory Davis. We're here with Lauren Neaves. Is that how you say it?
That is how you say it. Well done.
Okay, yes. Everyone knows on the show that I'm not the best with names, but it's okay. It's kind of become a part of my personal brand. But Lauren, thank you for joining us and getting unguarded for the call.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
So in true nature, we're just going to jump right into it. Again, if anyone wants to know more about Lauren, yeah, she was a hooper. She did her thing. So you could go Google her Wikipedia or listen to another generic podcast if you want to know the details. But, Rice University, you played at the amateur level. My first question for you was more so, what was your experience once you had to deal with agents in your own career?
Well, at Rice, my coach at the time knew an agent, was very close with him, and basically just passed me on to this agent. So there wasn't even the vetting of agents, talking to different ones, seeing which one was the best fit for me. It was just blind trust in my coach because I didn't know anything about the business. So I went with this agent who in reality was very good at what he did. And back then, the way agents did stuff is, I think, quite different than today. We'll get into that, I'm sure, a bit later. But yeah, I just followed his lead. I got an offer in First Division France as a rookie, which isn't super easy to get. So they advised me to take it and didn't really know anything much other than it was in France. It was X number of euros, sign on the dotted line, and off to France I go in a couple of months.
Yeah,
that was it.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is it's the same. I mean, obviously, from what I hear from our community, much of it, there's still that same process. Your college coach gives you a name, and you kind of go with that agent. So, and again, that's from the player perspective, I guess. If they're in a perfect world, there was a better way for players to really understand who they're working with. I mean, what would you have wanted to do differently?
Well, at the time, this also impacts how I work, but at the time, agents were just seen as finding jobs, getting you to sign on the dotted line, and that's it. You would talk to them occasionally if it was to speak about the next contract or maybe something was going wrong with the team. There wasn't like any sort of presence or relationship or, I don't know, sort of collaboration, if you want to say, between the two of you. And I think if I had to say I regret that, what I would have done differently is to try and talk with different agents to see with whom I got along best, who I trusted, who I would go to if I felt I was having an issue or struggling with playing time or other things. But again, back then, it may still be this way now with a lot of agents from what I understand, but the agent was literally just there to find a job, tell you to sign or not sign. And that was the extent of that agent's responsibilities. So that's what I would like to do differently, but I think the reality is still relatively the same. I mean, you're younger than me. You'll have to tell me.
Yeah. Well, I'm up there now, so I guess I have to follow up with the young ones coming up. But what I am hearing is it is the same. So it is that reality that, I've talked to a couple of former players now that are agents, and that was many of our realities. And then it's kind of like a shocker that, well, guess what? It's still happening. And so it's really understanding how we shift that or how we make it a better process. Tell me a little bit about, so I was trying to figure out, so where are you originally from?
I'm from South Florida.
Okay.
Between Miami and Fort Lauderdale. And then I went to Rice, like you said, for 5 years, redshirted my first year. And then I headed over to France. Geez, when was it? 2007. And I've been here ever since. I am still in France.
Yeah. So let's shift it a little bit from the real business talk. We'll get back in the weeds. But one thing, as you know, my co-founder, Julie, myself, one of our community members, Val, we're kind of the ex-pathletes. We have this internal brand of the ex-pathlete brand.
Mhm.
And you kind of encompass that because you went overseas, started playing, and then you stayed.
Stayed.
Why? Let's start there. Why? What made you stay?
I think, well, a combination of I really like it here in
Hmm.
Europe. Obviously, there's things I miss. I miss my family and other things, obviously, but I just like the vibe here and it suits me well. And also the fact that I have 3 young kids
Hmm.
with a French husband, that'll lock you down
Yeah.
and keep you here. So
For
there's
sure.
that. And yeah, I just made my life here. I stopped playing basketball eventually. Obviously, when you get to a certain number of kids, it's not easy, even though I'm very pleased to see more and more women being able to play and have kids. But back then,
Hmm.
it wasn't typical. And now, yeah, I'm an agent over here. I represent mainly French players and specialize in the French market, but I do represent other nationalities. But just to clarify that the French market is my main market. But before that, I was actually an English professor at the University of Po. So I did a number of different things after retirement, including stay-at-home mom, which didn't last very long.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's basically my story in a very broad nutshell.
How was the transition? I will say, France is I wouldn't say it's the easiest place to become an expat, and the
Oh,
language, etc. So,
oh yeah.
what were some of the challenges with kind of transitioning to saying I'm going to live here?
Well, firstly, just to even come over here as a rookie, I had no idea what I was getting into
Hmm.
whatsoever. None. Like
Yeah.
I arrived, first of all, none of my bags showed up. So that was just like, to start off not on the best footing. And I showed the apartment's old, not what we're used to in the States. Coach doesn't really speak English. The food is different. I think I probably cried every day for about
Hmm.
3 weeks. The first week I wanted to quit. I mean, they put us out on the track, and let me tell you, I never had done anything like a preseason
Yeah.
in Europe ever. I mean, just totally unprepared. And that's something that I change with my rookies is that I prep them hard before they
Hmm.
go over, saying you're going to go through some major roller coasters over there, up and down, but it's normal, and the good days will start to outweigh the bad. But is totally normal. So, and just with time, I found, my life here in the sense I made great friends with not just the other foreigners, but the French players as well, who I'm still very close with to this day. I made friends with people on other teams, created a sort of community, not just with the foreigners again, but also with some of the locals. I was very social and met people, had a good time, went out after games. I think
Yeah.
that helps a lot is to build a community over here, whatever community suits you, but you need to build something for yourself to get you through the daily mundane of just practice, weights, games.
Right. Yeah, that can get heavy for
For
sure.
sure. Yeah.
And then Netflix wasn't there when you were around, so it probably helped you to force
No,
you to
no
get
FaceTime. I mean, it was just coming out with that BB Messenger back
right.
then. There was, I mean, we're talking old school. Skype had just started. You couldn't watch games online. I know it feels like a really long time ago, but it wasn't that
Right.
long ago.
It
Things are
wasn't.
so much easier now for you guys. Y'all are spoiled. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It could be that it was easier for you because it forced you to get outside your comfort zone a little quicker. Where now
Very true.
you have video games, you have Netflix, you have all these things that can
Mhm.
allow you to stay in your bubble.
Exactly.
How did you meet your husband? Like, how did that work? Was it just out and about? And did your husband play? Like, what's the background story of that connection that ultimately kept you there a little bit longer
Um,
than?
well, personally, I wasn't a huge fan of the basketball players. Fun to hang out with, but I preferred people of a different path, so to speak, just to have something different. And my husband, he's actually a volleyball player, wasn't
Okay.
professionally. He works with computers and stuff, so very different from what I do.
Right.
That suits me well. Um, and yeah, after we got married, after 2 kids, things are done a little different over here.
Yeah. Hey,
But
that's fair.
yeah, hey, whatever
Yeah.
works, it worked for us. And yeah, we have a house here. We live not that far from Tar, maybe about
Mhm.
15, 20 minutes. So that's where I
Okay.
finished my career and still here.
Nice. So you're teaching English, and then
Mhm.
how did the transition to
Right.
becoming an agent happen?
Totally unexpected and was not a plan, not
Okay.
even close. So, as bad as my arrival was in France, I'm a very independent person. So I was able to figure stuff out on my own. I was probably my agent's favorite player because I just dealt with stuff myself with the
Yeah.
teams and learned how to handle everything. And eventually I got good enough at it to where my agents would ask me to talk to the other players they were sending over into France to kind of prep them and help them out. And then the partner he was currently working with, just to quickly explain, in France, to be able to sign players here, you need a France specific license.
Hmm.
And the partner my agent at the time was currently working with got a brain tumor. And
Okay.
so he stopped, and then he started working with someone else who he didn't like, was too soft with the teams. And so he messaged me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this officially?" Okay, well, tell me kind of what all that's about. And then that's
Hmm.
kind of how it started. And I wanted to officially get my license. I managed to get it in the first year, and it's taken off since then. That's maybe been, I think, it was 4 years ago when my former agent. He's still in the business. Mike Count, have you heard of
Okay.
him?
Yeah, for sure. He's
Yeah,
he's he's one of the bigger names out there. I need to
yeah,
get him on a
yeah.
call
He'll
too.
be happy to talk. He likes to talk. I say that nicely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Mike got me into that thought process of what about being an agent, and it ended up fitting me, my personality, the way I like to do things very well. I like how things are different every day. I like building relationships with players. I like getting along with teams and yet fighting with the teams at the same
Yeah.
time, and all the support and traveling to games keeps me involved in the sport, and it ended up working out well. So just to say that becoming an agent was not a plan or something I wanted to do, it just kind of
Mhm.
fell in my lap. And
Right. Let's talk a little bit more about that. There's a growing I mean, when I look at some of the agents in the markets, again, it's very male dominant still. You
mm-hmm,
know, there's not that many women.
mm-hmm,
And then some of them have not played, but there is a trend of more former players becoming
mm-hmm,
agents. But what we see is a lot of the athletes that are my age, preferably getting ready to transition, trying to figure it out. A lot of their agents are trying to do what Mike Cowan kind of did, like trying to get certain ones they see value in to become an agent.
mm-hmm.
What would you tell some of those women, especially in the women's side? What would you tell them to evaluate if they want to be an agent, and also evaluate if they should go under the wing of
Mm-hmm.
their agent to then get into the business in that way?
First thing I think would be useful is to already start to know exactly what you're signing and what all is involved, because often as players we just look at the basic things. It is a lot more than that, and so there's a huge learning curve in terms of understanding all that's involved with BAT, what's the obligations of the team and your own obligations as well. Something I went through and had a transition was, in the beginning I would look at things a lot just from the perspective as a player, because I
Hmm.
was a player. You know, I lived the experience as a player, but it's not so black and white when you're an agent. You're
Right.
working a lot in the gray to be able to get things to work out and get things moving. And so my question to them would be, will you be able to take a step back and get the emotion out of this and be able to look at things from both perspectives objectively, and be able to do what's best for your player, but also to what's best in terms of the whole situation. Sometimes it's not so easy. You know, a player hasn't gotten paid in a week, but maybe the team's not gotten paid from their sponsor. How do we conciliate that? You know, how do I talk this player off the ledge? And how do I get the team to pay them as soon as possible despite all this? So just to say that I think that's the biggest key to talking to these players who potentially want to be agents. Will you be able to see things from a different point of view? You know, are you able to work in the gray? And
Got
that's
you.
not often the case.
Yeah, I know that's something I would have to evaluate for myself.
Was I've looked at your application and I think and your Instagram page, and it's been a while since I've kept an eye on it because Jeff is a really good friend of mine and he helps
Hmm.
you guys out with some stuff. And it's a lot of great information on there for players for sure. But also there's some things that we missing some perspective. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where you have to be able to say, okay, I can start to see from that perspective as well to be an agent.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think as a player, in my time, much of my experience, as you said, was from a player standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I've talked to different agents and different managers, of course, of just trying to better understand their side.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think for me, it was always trying to identify who are the true allies for the
Mm-hmm.
athlete wholeheartedly, who
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to play the bias game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just been, my journey, I think. But of course, accountability is something that I think, yeah, athletes need to be held accountable, but I think also everyone in the ecosystem has to be held accountable.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the biggest things, and who's responsible for educating the player.
Yeah,
All of
that's
those
an
things are
excellent point.
questions.
No, that's an excellent point because that's something I regretted getting into this, and I was learning all of these new things. Like, why didn't I know any of this? And who's
Mhm.
going to tell you?
Yeah.
The president's not going to tell you. Your coach isn't going to tell you. Back then, agents were just like, sign this,
Hmm.
And I'm not belittling or saying my agent's bad. It's just things were different.
Yeah.
And I think it's still kind of this way. And I personally approach things very differently. Ask any of my players. They'll see voice messages from me that are like 3 minutes long. Oh gosh, Lauren's explaining something to us again.
Yeah.
But I want them to know what they're getting into. I want them to know what they're signing, what this means. The club said this. Why?
Yeah.
What does all that mean? What are you
Mhm.
getting yourself into? That way the player makes a more educated decision about whatever it is that they're doing. You can't make the best decision for yourself if you don't have all the information, how all the machines work.
Yeah. And then for me, the whole reason I started We Evolve was because I was one of those players that I just felt I want more information.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to blindly trust anyone. I want more information. I want to know why I'm
Mm-hmm.
not signing back if I
Yeah.
want to sign back. I want to know, and it's like that shouldn't be a hard thing. Talk to them and let me know the transparent
Right.
reason why, was it skill? Another thing, feedback. I feel athletes should get better feedback. Let them know what are they lacking to
Mm-hmm.
not get this done from a skill
Mm-hmm.
standpoint or personality standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's where the lack of transparency in the business, sometimes everyone gets comfortable for the player just being shuffled around and not
Mm-hmm.
really taking the time. And I get it. Time is of the essence. But that's where I feel when the player is asking, there needs to be things for those types of players to
Yeah.
exist.
And on the same token, too, I think a lot of agents walk on eggshells around their players. They're afraid of getting fired. They're afraid maybe of telling hard truths because sometimes the truth stings. Sometimes you
Yeah.
don't want to hear the club doesn't want to sign you back because you had poor body language on the court and the fans
Right.
didn't like it. Whatever. I'm just throwing something out there. Um, and that's where it needs to be established in the very beginning with a relationship with an agent and a player. Talk about how the agent functions and what you can handle. That's something I say from the get go. You will hear truth from me. It might be hard truth, but you will hear truth and you will know why things are the way they are. And I know a lot of agents don't like to do that because they're afraid of offending the player. I
Hmm.
told her, she shot 2 for 16. That's why she only played 10 minutes. Oh, instead of saying, oh, the coach is horrible, he's the worst, he's whatever. Yeah, he might be, and he probably is, but that doesn't excuse the fact you had a bad
Shot
shooting
two
night,
for 16, right?
right?
Yeah.
And this has happened before. So, and that's where it's super important to have a good relationship with your agent, where they're telling you these things to make you a better player and to help you through the process.
Yeah. And person. Because at the end of the
Exactly.
day, accountability. And I
Mhm.
think there is no excuse for that. And those are things that, like you said, it's not always black and white. There's the gray.
Yeah.
What are some, well, you say you saw some of my videos. What are some things, if you can recall, that you feel there's some gray area that's not being touched upon that maybe from the agent side you think
Oh, geez, what
we
was it?
don't
It
hear
was something
about?
I saw recently too. It was one of your videos. I was like, excellent points, but I'd have to look. I mean, I can quickly pull it up, but I don't even remember which one it was. But yeah, it's just more getting the perspective of an agent, what they're doing on their side that they might not say, to you because you might not like to hear it, but it's the reality. It's that kind of stuff. I'm
Yeah.
always going to defend the player. I was a player. I get it. But I'm also going to tell a player when something's not being done correctly or, and that's a big question for me is with my players when I talk to them, even the Frenchies, can you handle that? And most of them like it. I've only had Frenchies, foreigners included, in the past few years I've done this, I've only had one player leave me. And it was for that exact reason that she couldn't handle the truth. I feel like that movie, what was it? Few Good Men or something.
Oh yeah, when he's like, you can't handle the truth.
Right.
Yeah. This will be a good segue for content to be like, put that into like
yeah, but that's it. And that's the only reason. And that seems to work well for me. And the players feel better, more confident when they know exactly, what's going on.
Right.
What was it? Pulled it up. What was it? I don't know. I'll have to message you afterwards.
I mean, for sure, I'm always hinting at who does the agent actually work for. We can transition to that one of it's always it's the first question is for me is like, okay, we can't look at agents in our space like FIBA and Europe as LeBron, NBA, NFL agents. Clearly, there's a different dynamic. And from my perspective, how I see it is like LeBron and let's say 12 of the players that pay Rich Paul actually pay Rich. Like that's Rich Paul makes enough for his life to be able to totally focus and be like, all 360, I'm focused on them.
Right.
Whereas our model for us is not the same. You can't work for 12 European professional women and make that your life. It's just impossible.
Exactly.
And so the concept of we technically, in my opinion, don't pay the people that we're claiming work for us. And that dynamic is a little different because in higher level men, of course, you have scouts. Teams pay the scout to go find talent and help them figure out. NBA, they have scouts, and then those players have their own agents that they pay to fully advocate for them. In our space, I feel is a little different that the agent is kind of the scout for the team and also they're the work for the players. And this conflict of interest is where, for me, it's difficult. It's difficult. I think that's where some issues go wrong. And of course, you meet agents that are like, yes, you're right. This does happen. And I'm the good one in the business. But it's like, well, how do you deal with that? And so I guess talk a little bit about that dynamic of.
Right. So in Europe, as you said, according to FIBA, it's supposed to be the player paying the agents, but we know in reality there's always loopholes around that, and the clubs still pay. WNBA is different, as you know. It's the player who pays the agent. But if we're talking about Europe exclusively, yes, the teams pay the agent, and that is a huge conflict of interest because the agent is going to be saying, okay, I've placed one player here, but think of all the potential players I can place there later. I want to stay on that team's good side for future business, So if something happens with the player, they're like, is that worth the fight with this team? How can I smooth this over? Just that we keep working together, the team and I, or the coach and I, and definitely see that as a huge conflict of interest. I agree. In France specifically, for us to continue to be paid by the teams, technically we represent the teams. From the legality standpoint, but everyone knows we really represent the player. So there's no one fixed solution to this. It really just depends on your agent and who do you think they are as a person. You talk about how good they are at signing players, knowing BAT law, this, that, and the other, but do you really know them as a person? And are they going to defend you despite the potential loss of business from this team because it's the right thing to do or not. And then us personally, we don't represent any coaches. It's a decision that we've made to avoid as much as possible conflict of interest. Because if you take a coach in a EuroLeague team who makes us great money on commission, and we got some young player in there who's just being a pain in the butt and driving the coach up the wall, and she's asking us to defend her and, you know, talk to the coach, are we really going to bother the coach who's making us good money over this young pesky player? No. So yeah, that is the reality today. So we try and avoid it as much as possible already by not representing coaches, but it's also your reputation as an agent with clubs. Clubs know if you are honest and straightforward. I always try and be fair on both sides. That's why the contracts are not just for the players. They're also for the teams. And sometimes players forget about that. And that's where teams know that I will remind players of their responsibilities. I will remind players how to act when they're, you know, a little bit short in the performance department. And that helps keep the respect. But the teams also know that if there's ever a contractual issue or if they're acting incorrectly, we sue them. And they know it. It usually takes just one time. And they learn. And we don't really have these issues again. So I think that was a long-winded answer, but I hope that
No, I mean, I think it's a good answer. And I think, again, by all means, I do understand how difficult it must be to have to do that dynamic. Because at the end of the day, if Valencia, you know, you as an agent, I want to always have a working relationship with Valencia. Right. I mean, why not? You want to, but then, you know, the team knows they have some leverage because in the market, they know they are one of the best. And now it's like, how do you balance holding the team accountable without losing that relationship? In a perfect world, do you think there could be a model where collectives of players better compensate their own agents to allow them the ability to more so advocate for them in a little bit better way? Or do you think the current model will always be the same because the teams will kind of always look for those agents that they know stay in that gray area to work for them and find them the talent?
It's tough to say because then we have to change completely the mentality of players that we're so used to not paying agents that it's become a given. That's going to have to be a huge shift. Are we willing to give our money to pay our agent? And at the same time, the agent can better advocate for you. But if it gets so out of control, the team's just not going to want to work with that agent anymore, period. So good luck getting back to that team if you want to get back to that team. So that in one case where I will say things are black and white is the contract. Always. Teams know when they're acting up. Teams know when they're not doing what they're supposed to do. And it becomes nothing personal. You know, I still work with a team that I took to court last year and got the players full salary without her having stepped foot once in that gym. And I still work with them because they knew they messed up, and that's how it is. But it was done respectfully. You know, you ask once nicely, twice nicely. After that, I'm no longer on this case. Speak to the lawyer. That's now out of my hands. And so collectively, I would love to see how that would work. Have you guys thought of how that could work, like changing perspectives to where the players are okay to pay? And if so, what are you expecting to get from the agent for that? Like, are there going to be, because that's what I saw before, like you, and this is not a criticism, this is genuine interest for me as a former player. Like, okay, the player pays the agent 10%, let's say. What comes with that? You know, is that just finding contracts, or am I supposed to also find like a nutritionist? Am I supposed to pay for mental health counseling? Let's say maybe you make only 10,000 euros that season and my commission is 1,000, and I'm going to pay a nutritionist and everything else. I'm going to be paying you to work for you. You know what I mean? So again, this is not a criticism because
no,
I get it.
Totally fine. I feel like and again, this is something that's way beyond a podcast, but I
Right.
think,
Sorry about that.
our ultimate
Going down the
goal,
rabbit hole.
yeah, our ultimate goal for WeVolve is just that, how do we find, again, former athletes, active athletes to start to have, again, our own sessions or our own meetups. People, corporations and stuff have their meetups. People go to WNBA All Star for stuff, and I just think there needs to be more of a collective where we sit and we actually talk about this stuff. I don't think we ever talk about what are the possibilities to improve some of the problems we know exist. But from my perspective, again, you're totally right. I don't think the player that gives you $1,000 worth of commissions can ask for you to give them all these things. What I think there is an opportunity to create an ecosystem where we now can collectively work together and create a resource hub so we all can benefit more compared to the traditional, okay, Mike Count has his resources. This agent has his resources. At the end of the day, we know there's more of those athletes that can't give you a big commission that need help with where nutrition is that meets their, financial standing,
Right.
financial help, tax help, all of that. And we do know that many agents, they have their network, but how do we expand upon that? And I think it's just a little different. I know there was a former union rep from Italy that was trying to basically make the unions become like the agencies of those local markets.
Okay.
And where the players would go through them. And then it was like a marketplace. The teams of that local market could come and find, kind of like cricket in India. They go through, I believe, the league, and you have to be on the league site. And then the teams actually have to purchase the players from the league site. And those players have to find their own representation, whether it be a lawyer or someone to help them. So there are models out there. It's just, I think there's a way to better refine and clean up, I think, the industry to reflect the increase of technology and where we are in 2024. The sport industry will always be human commerce heavy. It's just how it is. It's relationships. But I think, how do we better help players to know who's who instead of this random DM of this European guy talking about I can represent you, and you see all these players' names that you do see familiar with them, and you're like, okay, I guess I go with him. That needs to change. So I don't have a direct answer, but I do feel there's a concept of a group of athletes coming together to better fund the work of our own chosen validated agents that empowers them. And if you have the best talent also in that group, I don't think the teams have a choice. That's my thought process. Now, if you don't have the best talent, then of course the teams can be finagle. But if you have the best talent, I don't know how many teams are going to say, well, we're just going to go get this worst talent. No, somebody's going to take that talent, and now you're going to be behind. So that's just a thought. Again, the biggest thing, like you said, how you going to get the players to buy in. And that's
no, but the concept is interesting. It really is almost like almost sort of makes me think of a law firm with like some superstar lawyers. They got all these clients and they choose what lawyer. It's like a full service boutique. You can almost do something like that with almost like a union with a select number of agents that work for the union exclusively and all the players y'all represent. And they can choose depending on which country they're going to, what they're looking for, and you've already vetted and have agents directly in that work exclusively for your collective, if you call it that, or a union or whatever. So the concept is interesting, that instead of the players all around one agent, it's the agent with all the players, part of that collective. So
and again, we'll see what happens and whatever. The starting point is, like you said, education, I think, and helping to unlock the mysterious agent, because it's a mystery. We don't know the individuals that we rely on for our careers. And a few of us get to know our agents on a deeper level because maybe we're more outgoing, we're more curious. And so, but, it's kind of like, you don't really know. Some agents, through this journey, I go on LinkedIn. They don't have a LinkedIn. Their websites have all their clients, but you don't know who they are. And it's like this mystery man. Or woman. And I don't think that's the start. Like, let's know who these people are, and how do we know who they are?
Right.
So that's something.
Yeah, and I find a lot of players too go into this whole process not even knowing what they want. You know, what are
Right.
you looking for in an agent? Like, do you want someone that just gets you jobs and that's fine by you? Great. Or do you want someone, you know, that you can talk to, someone who's been through it, you know, kind of like a former player? A lot of players, I feel like in the beginning, don't think about that enough. Because I'll ask them when I'm in, like, what do you want, Asia? I don't know, a job. Almost anyone can get you that, but you want something more? Like,
Yeah.
how do you envision this? I don't call it me working for a player. I call it a collaboration because we both have a shared common goal. Because the better this player does, honestly, the more she'll earn more, and in consequence, as will I.
Right.
So that's how I try and look at this stuff, that we work together, we're a team, and there's not one without the other. Because for me, my 10%, yeah, if you want to look at it from a legal perspective, the exact definition of an agent, at least in the French market, is that I put the player in touch with a team with the goal of signing a professional contract. That's it. I don't have to do anything else. But I don't feel that's enough. For me, it's handling all the crap that happens on outside the court, dealing with relationships with the coach or the president, if the water's not working, if there's missing something in the apartment. So I do all of that. That goes in my 10%. It's a presence. I follow every game of every player. I look for their stats. I do feedback. I'll message them, see how they're doing. I spend a lot of time on WhatsApp with my voice messages. But that's where my 10% is going. And that's something you need to ask an agent. Okay, your 10%, what do you do for that 10%? Are you just finding me a job, or is there something else involved? Explain to me.
Yeah. And it's something I think I've done a video of that as well on the app. I don't think I did it on Instagram.
You need to add this to the app, even though I'm not a player.
You're a player, you're a farmer, so you know
All right.
you come with a level of
I come with references.
Yeah. But it's another concept that I've thought about is like, okay, how do we hold agents more accountable to say, okay, 10%, what do I get? Let's set some deliverables. You know, for me, kind of being more in the business world, it's like, oh, there's deliverables in these contracts. Like if you don't do XYZ, you don't get this percentage. And it's like for us as players, like we complain and say, well, my agent didn't call the team. I don't have this ready. And it's like, well, what is the job of an agent? Which I think that's a good video. I wrote that down. I should probably make a video about that. Like we need to know the real job of an agent is this.
Yeah.
But if you want more,
that depends on each agent. There's how many agents out there in this business?
Yeah,
I'd say for each agent, there's a different way of doing this job.
Yeah. And you have to know how you want, like you said, the agent that works for you to do their job. But again, setting deliverables could be one. If you know, I want you to find jobs, etc. I have a brand. I'm leaving college with 25K followers. I also want you to help keep that going for me.
Yeah.
You know, I want you to help me find private equity deals. Athlete investment is booming. Do you have that network? Those are things that if you know you want that and you're expecting that in the back of your mind, then you should put that there when you present it to the agent. And then the agent can say, I don't do this, but I do have a network in XYZ. And then it's a discussion, which is normal. But again, as you know, there's some agents that don't respect that type of conversation with an athlete. It's like, don't you dare question
the player wants.
Yeah, don't question me. And then, or sometimes they say, yeah, I got it. And they don't. So obviously you're aware that there are the cons of the business. Partners. One thing, I have done a video of players understanding partners. I've had an NBA guy that, left the NBA, went over and didn't understand that, the one handling your business, probably who knows the most about that market you're in right now, is the partner agent.
Who you probably never talked to or know who he is.
And you didn't even know that when you hired your main agent, what came with that. So another thing about transparency is understanding, when I hire one agent, what other agents come in that deal. Talk a little bit about partners, how you balance dealing with your partners.
Again, another way of saying how agents work and how different they can be. I know some agents that try and work in all markets because, as I'm sure you know, and players maybe not know, that when you work with a partner, the commission is split 50-50. Mm-hmm. The player that works with their agent gets 50% just for the sake of representing that player, and the partner that actually does the deal, the negotiations, the contract, defending the player's interest there, is the one who's getting the other 50%. But that particular partner is an expert in their field. They know the teams personally. They know the coaches personally. They know the business personally. So big question to ask your agent, I think, with partners is, do you work with partners? And if so, what markets do they work in and how respected are they in their fields? Or do you place me everywhere? Because I'm going to tell you, it's impossible to be an expert in every country. I'm an expert in France, and I'll tell you straight up, I don't work in other countries because you need someone who knows the market, who knows the teams to protect you best. So I work with partners for that sake, even though it means splitting commissions. For me, if that player has a better season, she's happy and doing well, that's well worth it. So that, again, depends on each agent's perspective and way to do this business. So I'm very upfront with the fact that I'm an expert in France. I signed the most players in France out of any agent here, especially the foreigners. I'm well known here, but I'm not about to pretend I have that same impact in Spain or Israel. So I see what a difference it makes to work with someone who knows these markets, and that's well worth the splitting of the commission to me. But like you said, I feel a lot of players don't understand all these, fine print things that you speak only with your agent. But you have no idea that they don't even maybe know who the coach is or the dynamics of this team or some past history and stuff like that. So what's really great about my American partner, because, I represent his players like Haley Peters and who else does he have over here now? Amy Okonkwo and them. They are in direct contact with me. He trusts me enough to not steal his players, that they are confident enough to message me privately and talk about stuff. So they're like I call them my adopted babies over here. I look out, they're under my wing while they're here. So that's also important to see what kind of relationship your agent has with their partners. Is it kind of like almost like, how do you say, undeclared war, in the sense that it's a necessary alliance, but there's always that fear, is that player going to steal that player from me, So, that's important too, to find out what that network is like and how healthy that network is. Is it an exclusive network? Meaning, do we only work with each other, or is there other outsiders coming in too? So lots of due diligence, I think, and that is important.
Right. No, for sure. I think when we talk about the agents that work alone, have you seen where it is a difficult job for those that say, I work alone, I don't have partners. In France, of course, those that work alone they find someone that's a lawyer or somebody that
they just call
the contract.
A mailbox agent. It's French boîte aux lettres. You just sign the deal, but you don't ever talk to the player. You don't handle anything. It's your agent doing everything. Yeah.
So what, from your experience, the agents that don't have a network, so again, I think with you all, it's you, Mike Cowan, Prodep, I believe, is also. And then I don't know if you have someone else, or is it just you three that are partners?
So Mike, he's the WNBA guy, and all of his players that come over to Europe either go through me to France, or Jorge with Prodep to Spain and a couple other countries as well. There's also Alexandra in Italy, who is a former player. I don't know her last name. That's very American of me. And then there's also Ronnie in Israel.
Okay.
There's Murat in Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Murat's in Turkey. I also work a bit in Australia. I don't know how I got sucked into that one, but I
Yeah.
do have some players in the WNBL and the NBL1. Um, and yeah, so that's it. And we don't. I work with one other agent. Maybe you know her, Alexandra Shaw
Mm-hmm.
from
Yeah.
Sports First, who is
Yeah.
also a former player who I think you'd really
German.
enjoy. Huh?
She's in Germany.
She's German, but she
She's
lives in the
German.
States. Yeah.
Okay.
She would be an interesting interview, I think, to give another
Okay.
perspective as a player agent. And she's great, one of my favorites. She represents our players in Germany, and
Okay.
vice versa. I represent them here. So a very select group. I've actually tried with one or two different partners that I've just quit working with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to name names, but I didn't like the way that they worked. I felt it was too mercenary and I couldn't trust them.
Yeah.
So I'd rather just not work with these people than just get some extra money on the side by placing their players. I don't know. Maybe it's the former player in me. I just can't do this for the sake of money.
Right. Right. And is it transparent? Like if we were to, do a little thing like, oh, these are the partners. Is that transparent? Is that is it okay for the world to know that you all are connected, or is
Yes,
that something?
I'm
Okay.
very clear about who I work with and who represents who. And yeah, the only little twist for one is I represent, Jorge represents my players in Spain if they ever got signed there. But he works with another agent in France with pro debt players. So I represent Cowan Group players, but not pro debt players because he has a long-standing relationship with Ann Waters, who is a former player of his, and her wife, who works as well as an agent. I forgot her name. But that's fine because those are long-standing relationships and it's very clear between all of us. So,
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you. What's the most difficult piece between having to, working with all those different partners compared to, again, some agents that I know are like, I prefer to work alone because it's just too difficult between having all the different partners. What would you say is the pros and cons, I guess, of both scenarios for the player to kind of know what risk they're willing to take?
Yeah, so obviously my partners represent their own players in the agency. So they're always going to, prioritize their players in that market. So for example, if a team in Spain has an opening for a position, of course, Jorge is always going to push his players first. And if they don't like those players, then he'll offer ours. So there's that downside for sure. After, I don't know exactly. I can't say how Jorge works. I could just be making a huge supposition here, but I would assume it would be like that. And then, yes, I would say that would be the biggest con, is a little bit of a conflict of interest there. But on the same token, I could never fully push for my player to be signed there in the same way Jorge could. Because I don't know this coach. I don't know what he wants exactly. I don't know how this team functions. What's the best way to negotiate with their manager or their president? Because you're dealing with people. You're not just dealing with clubs. You got to know who they are and the best strategy to work with each of them and get the best result. So that is the pro, is that you're working with a partner who knows that market, who knows the people. So yeah, I would say that would be the biggest pro, and the biggest con would be you don't know if you're being prioritized or not with the partner's own players.
Got you. Let me look at my list. Transparency.
Yeah.
We can end on that one. Transparency. Again, some of the things I talk about is pay transparency. Of course, spoke to another agent privately the other day around how are you supposed to know really your market value, and also not, and again, it was like, you have to trust your agent. That's your agent job. And I'm like, for an American, it's a huge market. I could be saying I want to go to New Zealand, or maybe I want to go try to Dubai action that's going on for whatever reasons, personal and playing, from my perspective is like, the contracts that come on your desk. Of course, it's said that, well, if you call a team, the team is going to tell you the truth, that this is what they paid that player. So, more or less. with paid transparency in our space, what are your thoughts on that? And do you agree that the agent knows all?
I don't think we could ever know everything. We could think we got the most money for the player, that we could, but maybe there was a little left over. But that's where it's really important for the agents to know each club and the budgets that they're working with, and to have a relatively good relationship with them and honesty. Like, I have teams who call me about players I don't even represent to get my honest opinion of the player. So my goal is to place players that will do well, not just place players for the sake of placing them, because I don't want them to get fired. The team doesn't want that either. So for paid transparency, from one season to the next, it's tough to say, will they have the same budget at that position the next year? Are they prioritizing another position over that one? So maybe more money's going to the point guard instead of the center. After each particular player and their career path, in the team's eyes, do they deserve that amount of money? What does that player deserve, in their opinion? What's the going rate based on their talent, what they've proven overseas? Are they a rookie? Are they a vet? Have they played Euro Cup, Euro League? There's so many elements that go into all of this. Also knowing the players' expectations, while also keeping them grounded in reality as well. So that's a tough question, but I think it's good to have that kind of transparency. I know you guys, I think, upload contracts on the apps and stuff like that, to see what was being paid and what's not. But what's tough is that it's each player is individual. I always tell my players when they compare, girl, stay in your lane, because it's going to drag you down. All you're going to be thinking about is, I didn't get what I deserved, instead of maybe seeing this opportunity as a stepstone to something better. Because sometimes it's an investment into your career, maybe to accept less money, but play in Euro Cup to get a big contract the following years. So that's a good question, but there's so many different tangibles and things that go into this.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I mean, super gray.
Yeah, it's a different, are you a rookie, etc. Your output, even as a rookie, if you're coming off of a Final Four or something, you have more leverage. All those things come into play.
Drafted, WNBA training camp.
Yeah, but again, I mean, we've seen where, yeah, you've been drafted, but that D2 player came over and killed you in the league. I mean,
right.
It's reality.
That's why teams are so iffy about rookies. They don't ever know what they're going to get. Also, too, not all rookies can handle being overseas. Just to give an example of one who just left home 2 days ago. She's been here 2 weeks. Great situation, great money for a rookie. She couldn't hack it because the food was different. And now the team is out money for the player license, the letter of clearance, and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's for sure. Rookies, you never know what you're going to get, but there's some countries that like that, status. I think Turkey and Israel are those countries that like that WNBA aspect. Other countries care.
Yeah. And that's something that I think, again, as far as what we're doing, you can take those attributes. Now with the power of technology, we could be taking those attributes, tracking more of this, and maybe using more of the things of better matching from a holistic standpoint. I think we can maybe start to know more or less if a player, I mean, it's hard, but I think there's things when if a player will make it in certain countries due to what we know about a country, the food, where they come from and wherever they're home, and also just in general, their adaptability in general, which will require, doing a little bit more work. But I do think that is one side from the player side for when we talk about matching. It's not only matching to the coach and their playing style, but matching the culture. If they're going to be happy in this environment and be able to stick it out, and also the living conditions, which is always a mystery. It's like you sign a contract and you just land there.
You don't know what the apartment's going to look like.
Let's see what car and apartment I'm going to get today.
Yeah. I've been there.
So it's difficult. And that is where I do agree, having a local partner who understands and probably more or less has learned what you're going to get could help to prepare that player. Away from that, I think, in general, what would be some of the key things you would love to walk away letting players know about the agent side, being that you were a player? you've gone through those challenges as well, but now you've been able to take time to fully immerse yourself into the other side of the business. Like, what are some of those key things you think players need to really take time to be educated on and know about?
Yeah, like I said, just to start with the contract, oftentimes players just look at, the very basics, like what my money is, apartment, flights, but there's obviously way more than that in a contract, including players' obligations, what they're expected to do for the team and what that involves. So players need to understand that it's a two-way thing, because we always talk about contracts protecting players. Team tries to fire a player, we sue them, or get a buyout, things like that. But we don't talk about the player. If they just try and leave, what could be the repercussions, the consequences of that? I've been through that once or twice, where a player had no clue that, oh, I just can't leave.
Right.
So I would say that really understanding the fine print of a contract and all that's involved, understanding what the next steps are if you don't get paid, how does it work with BAT and all that stuff. To be honest, BAT is not my expert realm because I deal with the French courts, but I do know, and I think I saw something on your page about now how it's so much more accessible for players to go after their money in smaller amounts. It's not so expensive, so that's good. I would say also learning how to see things from other people's perspective, as hard as that is, because we think we're right, that we're the injured party always, but in order to really understand the big picture, we need to understand where they're coming from and why they're doing what they're doing. So to be able to put emotion to the side, righteousness to the side. And that's hard. I struggled with that my first year or two as an agent. I just wanted to go, gung ho on these clubs, who were, I think, doing my player dirty, but I didn't get anything done that way. So there's that. I would say too, to think about what kind of agent you want to be. How do you want to represent players? What are you willing and not willing to do? Where do you want to work? Are you WNBA only, or do you want to do NIL, or do you want to just do Europe? Can you do Europe while living in the States and never seeing your players? Questions like that. So there's a lot of stuff to think about. It's not just so cut and dry. Like, yeah, I think being an agent would be cool, would be fun. It keeps you in the sport. There's a lot involved. Like, are you ready to pass the exams? Are you ready to pay? I think for FIBA, you have to pay, was it $1,500 a year just to keep your license?
Yeah.
How much?
I think it's still 1,000. I think it's unless they up the prices, but it's 1,000. And then of course you have your other licenses if you want to go get the French, Italy, Hungary.
Hungary and Italy now.
And then WNBA if you're trying to have the whole trio.
Yeah.
I mean the whole bucket of certifications, and more to come maybe. Who knows?
Also, too, to know that you have no vacation time. Like, for me, at least if I do the job the way I see it, my phone is always with me. I'll be on calls during dinner with my kids. I was on vacation this summer for just a week, and I was on the phone for 2 days trying to help a team out fix something with the player. But you have to be sure that your family's on board for this. It's a lot of personal sacrifice. So you got to make sure that you love what you do, because it's a lot. And if you're only doing this for the money or whatnot, you better represent about 100 players, or you got to be a shark in the waters. And if that's not what you want to be, you got to do things differently. And with that comes concession. So I'm willing to accept the sacrifices. So, lots of introspection with this job, honestly.
Gotcha.
It's tough.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for the time. Definitely, was a good talk, and some accountability videos I'll need to make for the player side after this call.
It's not to throw the players under the bus at all. It's just, I don't think they realize, and who's going to tell them?
Right, and that's why we're here. To bring more light to both sides and the whole ecosystem in general. But of course, thank you. Let me know if Mike Cowan is open. to the call and any of the other group of your partners. I've met Ronnie before, I think, when I was a rookie in Israel,
Okay.
way back in the day.
What
Talking
year
to him.
was that? When were you?
That was that 2011 or 2012?
Right when I retired. That makes you feel younger. Hope that helps.
That's when I got there. Back, my agent was working with starts with a Z. I don't know if he's still a agent or not in Israel, but there was some issues with that where I was done working with her, American agent, and then Ronnie was in Israel, and I found out some teams wanted to hire me, but the partner, because I stopped working with the American agent, kind of was telling them I was too expensive and not available. And so I think I met him that way, where I was trying to figure out, like, how do I still get to these teams that I know? Because one of them wrote me on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I first learned about partner agents and how that could go bad for you if, one, you're not working with that one. And then later on, that partner agent tried to get me.
Yeah, do that. They'll do that. If someone's not happy over here with another agent, they can try and pick you up just because it's not going well. It's a nasty business. I'm not gonna lie.
So yes, again, would love to have those conversations, just to, again, put some stuff out there, and then of course challenge you all to let players know a little bit more about you and hear these conversations, because I think it also is great to help the players make better decisions of who they want to work with.
This is y'all's life. You're on the court. You're living this day in, day out. You have to have more control of what's going on in your life.
For sure. So, all right. Thank you. I think I have all of your socials of where players can find you. I know it's G Agency on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
You're on LinkedIn.
I do. Yeah, I am on LinkedIn, but I would say that very lightly because I never actually log in.
Okay.
Often. I have enough to handle. I'm the Facebook generation, so you throw Instagram at me, that's a full-time job.
Okay. All right. So the Facebook handle?
Well, there's Facebook on there, but I don't do too much with it. I'm just saying I'm an older generation, but I would say Instagram is the best way to reach out, or WhatsApp,
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you, Lauren, for the time.
Thanks, Jory. Glad to hear you guys are doing this.
Definitely.
Okay. Take care.
I guess I gotta do it on myself.